Okay, I want to talk you through how Joel and I have been doing flashcards. So it's been really effective, and he's doing really fantastic with it. So, first of all, I will pull out the vocabulary that he has gotten to in his book. I actually store my vocabulary cards like this. I have lessons 1 through 6, 7 through 12, 13 through 14. I have actually all of them through lesson 42 because that will get us through challenge 1. And that way, like later on when he's in challenge B or challenge 1, this is what I do with my older son. I can just say, hey, pull out, this box and work on these cards or something, and he can just easily access them. We have a drawer full of these boxes. Anyway, so this is kind of how I store them, and they are separated. Oh, geez, sorry. They are separated in here by lesson. So anyway, so I have, so far what we have gotten through is page 42, I think. So I have all the vocabulary cards here from that. So now, what I'm about to talk to you about is how I will do flashcards with him, and I only do that maybe once a week with him. So usually he's doing the flashcards on his own, and these flashcards are all scrambled up, and he's just kind of running through them on his own. When that's the case, I will have him, first of all, scramble them, and then second, he will do them with the Latin word showing, and he will try to make sure he knows the English word. And then some days I'll ask him to do it the other way around, where he is looking at the English word and trying to identify the Latin word. But when I'm working with him, I will first of all sort them out like this, and I'll do all kinds of crazy things. So, like, first and foremost, I might run through a couple of the groups based on the declension, and the verbs are conjugations, and then I have other words down here. But this particular set of cards, the color code, the solid are the nouns, this funky shape here, I think those are chevrons, are called, these are your verbs, and then these have other words like conjunctions and prepositions, and then they are color coded. First declension is pink, second is blue, third is red, and then conjugations same way. So usually, I've already explained this to Joel, but the verbs, he doesn't have to know this right now, but when we get to verbs, you will have to remember which conjugation the verbs belong to. So I've already explained to him this is first conjugation, second conjugation, and third conjugation because the colors line up. Even though we're not really there yet, but at least he has a heads up as to what is coming. So sometimes, here are some types of things I might do with him when I'm doing flashcards with him. I might take just one batch and just work on the first declension nouns and make sure he knows them forwards and backwards and see how quickly he can go through them. The second declension have a unique quality in that the genders are dependent upon that nominative singular. So I might ask him to take these cards and sort them out. Like, what is the difference between the two cards? Well, some of them end in oos, so he would pile all the ooses up in one pile and the in another pile. Sorry, I didn't give myself enough room. So after he sorts them and he recognizes we've got oos, we've got so this would be what he would be doing, oos and then I'll, what's the difference? And he'll tell me, well, these are masculine and these are neuter. So once we'll have them sorted like that, I might then say, okay, let's go through and let's just work on the masculine. And maybe that will help him to always connect these particular cards with masculine if he's doing them together. And then these particular cards would be neuter, even though they do have a blue on the outside. So again, forwards and backwards, sometimes starting with Latin, sometimes starting with the English. If we're scrambling them up, he can do that on his own. Third declension, we'll do the same thing when we go through the third declension nouns. So I might ask him I might say, you know what, take the third declension nouns and sort them into masculine, feminine, and neuter. And then once he's done that, if he's done them all correctly, then I'll ask him to explain, well, tell me why these particular nouns are all masculine. And then he would have to walk through the rules of, well, they either name a man person or they end in ER or OR. And then the same thing for feminine and neuter. I would have him explain to me the rule. But then he would have the 3 piles of either masculine, feminine, or neuter, because that's one of the tricky things with third declension is all of the crazy gender rules. So, and again, I might run through the cards once we've done that. Sometimes we'll scramble them up. Sometimes we'll keep them separate in their different genders. Verbs, I probably would just throw them all together in one pile and practice them. If I had him sort the verbs at all, because right now he's not supposed to know the conjugations. Right now the only thing he really knows with verbs is they either end in an NT or a T. So I might ask him to sort them that way. So here's my T's. These all end with T. These end in NT. Oh, here's a TIS. We've got one of those in there. We've got a T, an NT, and an NT. And I would ask him, what's the difference between these? This would be third person singular, third person plural. And then I might say, we have this one little guy here. What does this mean? And he needs to remember that song, the OST, must, tis, unt. And that would remind him that this is the second person plural. So this would be you, plural. And so we'll go through that briefly, and I'll make sure he's understanding these rules, and then I can quickly quiz him. So I might separate out the singulars and have him do those all in a row, and then the plurals, and then this guy. Or we'll scramble them all up and work them together. So then you have this batch, and I think I have another video out there on what I've done with these. Is a lot of times I'll have him put them in order. Again, OST, must, has, unt, but we have an M here instead of an O, because sometimes it's M and not O. But he'll organize these like this. OST, must, tis, unt. And then I'll have him, okay, which pronoun do each of these go with? I, you, he, she, it. We, you, plural, they. I might have him tell me what they mean. I might then I'll just scramble them all up and then have him tell me what they are. Or we'll do it backwards. Again, they'll all be scrambled up. I'll do this, and he has to tell me the Latin word. And then last but not least, we'll hit up on these other words over here. We've got some conjunctions, prepositions, I think are all that we've got in this pile so far. Oh, there's an adverb. We'll talk through those parts of speech a little bit. The one tricky thing with prepositions that we've learned so far is that prepositions don't always go in the ablative case. So I will ask him which of these. Now, the front of this card tells you. So these we have to, hold on, sorry. So I've got my 2 ablatives and my 2 accusatives. And so I might make sure he understands that. We'll talk through that a little bit, maybe look at a sample sentence. But I'll turn them over, scramble them up, and ask him which ones of these takes the ablative and which ones take the accusative. So we'll pull out, those are ablative, these are accusative, and then, you know, again, maybe we'll scramble up this whole batch and go through them forwards and backwards. So it takes a few minutes, but again, I only do it once a week, if that. When he's doing flashcards on his own, they're just kind of all scrambled up, and he just runs through them once. So flashcards are really important. It's a good place for you to quiz your kid and make sure that they know what's going on in more ways than simply the vocabulary. The other thing would be, like, we have this new batch of cards. These are the ones I'm introducing into this deck today. And so, because we had our community day yesterday, so I might go over these by themselves before we get into all the other stuff. So once we've gotten to the point where I know that he knows certain rules, then maybe I don't quiz him on that for a few weeks and I revisit it down the road. Now, we'll tell you, some of you have this other batch of cards here. They look like this. Just, for whatever reason, I ended up with two sets. And so I really wanted to try these out. These have a totally different color coding system, which is fine. I decided to sort these in a little bit different way. So I sorted them, my pink cards here, everything they will use in Challenge A. The green ones are Challenge B, and the blue ones are Challenge 1. And I sorted them by parts of speech. So this, honestly, I don't know that I'll use with my Challenge A student as much, because until we get later in the year, because many of these words he hasn't gotten to yet because they haven't been introduced. But sorting them this way was very effective for my older son who was in Challenge 1 last year. I could just pull out a batch and say, I want you to work on, all of the nouns from this category. And so that gave him a different way and a different approach to working through that vocabulary. So anyway, those are a couple of the ways that I will go through flashcards, and I hope you guys have a great day.